Hi there.
Hi, how are you doing?
Well, how are you?
Doing good. Was Gus trying to send me a video or a picture?
A video.
I got a picture.
What kind of picture did he send you?
Whoops.
It was a couple of dog butts.
Ah,
Huh.
come on.
Yeah, we took Finn on 2 walks yesterday and today with Penny.
Okay.
So we wanted to send you the video and kind of talk about how we continue to increase his socializing capacity.
Sure. Sorry, I'll double. Yeah, it shows image on when I click on it. I see Finn looking directly to the left, like completely not wanting to look towards Penny.
Yep. Yep.
Was that the closest? It looks like you guys are approximately 2.5 feet apart.
Yeah, yesterday I think that was probably the closest. Today he seemed a little bit more comfortable and was closer. I would say probably more like 2 feet today,
Okay.
but still really avoiding looking at her.
Yep.
He did at the end of the walk when we were saying goodbye to them. He was on my right and I pet her on my left. And he kind of looked at her and wagged his tail, so that felt good.
So wagging tail doesn't always mean happy. Just
Okay.
Okay. Wagging tail means something's on the brain.
Okay.
Okay, it means it's stimulated. So it can either be stimulated in the fashion of he recognizes what touch means, right? So nothing negative, really, just like, okay, there's some energy there. Especially if Penny like maybe started to like wiggle a bit and her energy increased. It can be, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That actually happened to one of my trainers here. She was petting her friend's dog, and this is like, I think maybe the first time I may have heard of something similar to this, but her dog wasn't even near her. It was like across the room or something, and she was petting her friend's dog, and she looked at her dog, and he started curling his lip. So clearly not very fond of her touching another dog. And in other cases, it could just be like, him, how do you say, just in a more positive fashion, kind of just getting more settled. What will really tell, of course, is like if there's anything that happens after the fact. Okay. But yeah, just as a rule of thumb, wagging tail doesn't always mean happy.
Okay.
You want to look at the placement of the tail. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it, high, medium, or down low, tucked in? Like there's a lot of things that factor into play.
Right. And he was seated, so his tail was on the ground, kind of going back and forth. So who knows? But that's good to remember that it's not necessarily positive, that it's more tuned in.
For sure. So I got the video here. I'll download it real quick. So what did you want to talk about today? Do you want to talk about the closing that threshold of Finn and dogs? Because I think there was also like a resource guarding thing.
Yeah, if we could talk about the resource guarding, I feel like it's gotten a little bit better with playing fetch. So I don't think that's hasn't been as much of an issue, but maybe some strategies in case it does come up again. But yeah, I feel like the socialization is kind of the primary
Okay.
thing.
So resource guarding is fairly simple. The concept of sharing isn't really a dog thing, it's a human thing. Some dogs are capable of sharing in the sense of that they don't care. It can sometimes, some dogs will resource guard with humans, but not dogs. Sometimes they'll resource guard with dogs, but not humans. And sometimes they do both, and sometimes they don't do either. Okay. Let's say with you guys, Finn is completely fine with you taking things from him. Like you don't even say anything. You can just grab it. And he looks at you like, whatever, right? Because he knows you, he trusts you. However, don't assume that will carry over to people he doesn't know.
Right.
Okay, this is super common. And I think people's expectation is anyone should be able to take anything from their dog, and that's, in my opinion, not true. It doesn't even apply to humans, right? So One thing would be, just informing friends that come over or anyone that comes over, like, Finn has something, just like, there's no need for them to disturb him, in my opinion. Okay, I said, just leave them alone, whatever. If they drop something and it happens to be theirs, right? So if you just told them like, hey, Finn's great with us, but he doesn't just let anybody take something from him. So if you happen to drop something, like, just let us know and we'll take care of it for you. Otherwise, if you're wanting to teach Finn more so a release command, which is how we go around the resource guarding, and it can be taught or reinforced to others as well, but it does take time to practice, is, for instance, does he have good ball drive? Like you said, you play fetch with him?
Yeah.
Will he go all day, or does he tire out after a little bit?
Pretty much. He'll go all day unless it's super hot. So yeah.
Okay, so we may be able to use that to our advantage. When Finn does the retrieve, does he drop it naturally, or do you have to take it from him?
It used to be that he would drop it naturally, but then when you would go for it with your hand, he would like try and nip your hand, but now he drops it and noses it towards us.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
Yeah, and he, like, if you just kind of like put your hands towards the ground or point at the ground, like, he'll generally drop it until he's sort of done and just wants to run off into his corner and have his own ball,
Okay.
So eventually, but he usually just drops it and noses it towards you.
Okay. So what I would do here is, when you play with Finn, have him collared up. And has he played fetch with the e-collar on yet?
Probably not. Well,
No?
yeah, because he has it.
I do it with him. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And his behavior doesn't change, like he's not more timid or anything? Okay,
No.
perfect. You want to dip really low, like go down to 1 and then work your way up in increments of 1. And when he brings the ball, what I use the word out, you can use the word drop, or the word drop or whatever, to cue him to release what he has. Now, release doesn't always mean physically, as in spit the ball out. Release also means mentally. Okay. So if someone says drop and a dog spits it out and they're still staring at it, they released it physically, but mentally, if you go for it, they're still going to want to nip at your hand to set the boundary of, hey, this is still mine. Okay. So we want both the physical and the mental release. So he brings it towards you. I would refrain from any pointing and stuff. Just cue the word drop. And on 1, you're going to start tapping. And what you should see is Finn back away. Okay, back away, and ideally stop staring at the ball if he does that. If you see no response, you go to 2, you're pressing the button, no response, go to 3, and at some point you'll see him back off, and he might back off but still look at it, which is fine in the beginning, but I'm wanting more space. Okay, when you go to reach for it, if Finn is still attached to the ball, and it seems like you already passed this, but just as FYI, if he decides to move forward or any motion forward, you would just freeze and tap to back him away. We wouldn't say anything. Okay. So when you cue the word drop, drop means it's it's off limits until I give you permission to have it again. Okay. If you say drop again, you're going to just end up saying it 1,000 times, and he's not going to learn the process, the concept. You want to say it once, and then you reinforce it. You pick up the ball, and then I say break, and then I throw it, and now it's up for grabs again. Okay. The reason why we're going very low is, 1, I know Finn is very sensitive. 2, I'm trying not to kill ball drive. Okay. So expect in the beginning, you may see some hesitancy or maybe even a dip in play, because now there's rules to things, but we're using a exercise, an activity that you can repeat with him on a regular basis to teach him the concept of drop, right? So if you practice that for a couple of weeks every day, and then he has a really good drop and he spits it out and he sits back and he's just kind of waiting, theoretically it should transfer to other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But you need the practice of repetition. So I'm hoping that he's got enough drive that it doesn't dip entirely, and you're able to teach him in a controlled context and relaxed context that drop simply means release it. And then in the home, once you feel like he's got a good concept of that, you can try it with, bully sticks, antlers, raw bones, whatever you give him to chew on that would last a period of time. So if I give him a raw bone and I know that's going to last for a long, long time, I may give it to him for 15, 20 minutes and then come back, and he's already obviously pre-collared, drop, and he drops it, steps away from it, and walks away. That's complete surrender. Okay, and then I can remove it, I can put it up, or I can pick it up and say, okay, break, and then offer it to him again, and then sometime later I can do another drop command. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not really worried about it for us. Like, he's gotten pretty good with us. Like, he'll run back, kind of noses the ball, but he will get kind of barky, which we don't like. And I think the reason we really would want that is because, like, we have young nephews and nieces, and he can be very guardy with them, and they're like at head level, and he could be, so yeah. Ideally, I guess we teach it to him, and then maybe it can transfer to other scenarios where, like, right. He knows that even with them, I guess that's the place I would like to get to eventually, so that we could feel more confident that he's not going to run after them or go after a hand when they go to pick a ball up,
Correct. So that's the whole point of the using the fetch exercise. Because for other dogs, when we try it with food and stuff, they tend to like just end up being completely dissuaded. Okay, they're like, nah, it's not even worth it anymore, which is normal. It sucks because you're trying to get a balance of both. But I tell people you'd rather have your dog either not interested and avoid the whole problem than to try to balance things out and have a problem. But the idea is that you practice it so much and that he recognizes the cue of drop, that it applies to anything and everything, and it applies to whoever says it. Okay. Now, very important. If Finn were to have anything in his possession, my advice to you is with children, you always just teach them natural boundaries. Hey, if Finn has something, just leave him alone. If you need to get it, tell an adult. Okay. Because let's say you did build it to the point where Finn will allow one of the children to take something from him, right? Is that children will apply how they act with the dogs within their immediate family or the ones that they have access to on a regular basis and apply it to other dogs, okay? So I actually had this happen to a client of mine. I've had it happen to a few clients, but I had it happen to one client in particular that their child used to take whatever they wanted from their dog. And I warned them, I said, you want to dissuade that behavior, tell your child to ask you, right? And then fast forward a couple of weeks, kids at their friend's house tries to take something from their dog and gets bit in the face, okay? Because they're thinking, I could take anything from any dog because that's what they're used to. So as precaution, I always just put a lot of boundaries with kids, because how you allow them to behave with your dog and the dogs within their family is how they'll behave with strangers' dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's across the board if you're teaching them the boundaries.
Correct. So that's this way they're always going to referring to an adult. And I'll tell my clients, I'm like, when you have a child, tell them to ask permission to pet your own dog, the family's dog. And they're like, that's the weirdest thing. I'm like, yeah, because they're going to think that they can pet any dog whenever they want, however they want. And it doesn't work out well. I've heard several stories throughout the years of dogs getting bit because of this comfort, like this too comfort. It's just real simple. Just teach them boundaries, teach them always ask first, and it'll keep them safer in the long run. Okay?
Great. Sounds good.
Yep. Otherwise, a very simple process. You can always shoot me an email, again, video. If you're practicing and something's not, transferring well, just let me know, and then I'll go over it again with you, okay?
Yeah.
Any questions about that?
No, that sounds good. I think we could practice that and find our number and then just drill it.
Oh, yeah. So with the barking, like when he's really excited and we're not throwing the ball forward quickly enough or whatever, and he's getting kind of barky, would you also tap at low numbers for the barking to make that stop?
So now applying this structure may actually resolve that issue. Okay. Because now he's getting overstimulated, because right now there's no real boundaries. Like, yes, he's releasing it, but he's still like, gimme, right? So when you start to apply the boundary of, I tell you to drop it and I make you physically and mentally disengage, it may resolve the barking because now he's not going to be over that kind of threshold, okay? Otherwise, if he is, what you would do is, you go to pick up the ball, and if he barks, you'll just give a couple of taps on the level that you're at, and you might see Finn back away. He might even yip in response, not because he's in discomfort, but because he's just so in ball drive, and he might, put his butt down on the ground, okay? Don't perceive that as a sit. It's a relaxed state. So what you're doing with the taps is you're just saying like, hey, buddy, I know we're playing ball, but you got to keep that energy level down. I don't want you barking at me for things, okay? Mm-hmm. And then once you look like he's kind of settled, wait a second or so, break and throw, right? Now, when I cued the break, if he barks and runs after it, that's just excitement. Okay, so it's not so much him barking at you like, give me that ball. It's like, yes, and then he goes for it, okay? So just making sure that we're interpreting those barks correctly. And I believe I might have a video of a dog that I worked with many years ago that had crazy ball drive. I'll see if I can dig it up and send it to you guys just as a visual reference. But yeah, you can absolutely correct the barking at you because that's just him being demanding. And it's not something we'd want to reward.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Other questions?
I think we're more interested in the socialization stuff. I mean, we've been trying to do 2 times a week.
Nice.
But what else? I mean, you had like general questions about like.
Yeah, no, I think it is majority socialization. I guess I did have a general question about crating him. Like, we crate him every time we leave the house. Mm-hmm. Will there ever be a point, like, in a year or more that we don't crate him when we leave? And if so, how would we know when that would be? Okay, so my general rule of thumb for dogs or puppies is for the first year of their life that they're with you from the day that you get them. So if the dog is, a 2-month-old puppy, then at 1 year and 2 months, right? If it's a 2-year-old dog, then at 3 years. I start to experiment or have my clients experiment with letting the dog roam free. Or like they might start with they'll start with a limited space, and then once they see like the dog is okay, they'll gradually let the dog have the full space, okay? The reason why for the year is for puppies, they go through a lot of different developmental stages, so they chew on stuff. So we don't want them destroying things. For older dogs, especially, I've had quite a few people rescue a dog and kind of do the whole mi casa, su casa approach, and they come home and the dog's torn up the house.
Yeah.
Right? Because they either went from home to shelter to rescue to a new home, and it's so much change that they're like really anxious, and it leads to destructive behavior. In other cases, they have separation anxiety, and that leads to destructive behavior. So having that year of them being created allows them to learn the schedule of life. Mom and dad work 9 to 5, and then they come at 5:30 and they let me out, and then we spend the evening and the night together, right? And then the next morning at 8 o'clock, I eat, I walk, come back 9 o'clock, I'm in my kennel again. So then they get used to that routine, and we prevent any destruction from happening. And this is just my rule of thumb. I've had plenty of people like obviously feel bad that their dog is crated and like not do it, and they're completely fine. My whole thing is just it's easier to avoid it than to gamble and see what happens. Now, once you start to experiment with allowing Finn the freedom of being loose, let's say, within the first day he's already chewed, like maybe you put him in the kitchen and you put a dog gate up, but then you come home and he's chewed up a cupboard, right? I just tell people gamble on the side of probably not going to happen unless you want to gamble more things being chewed up, and just kennel the dog when you're gone. Okay. It's nothing good or bad. Dogs sleep up to 16 hours a day, 16 to 20 hours a day. You're just picking for 8 hours where they're going to be, and you're confining them. Right. In some cases, people do gamble it. They're like, well, I'm going to keep trying because I can replace this stuff easily. And I go, sure, no problem. And then the dog gets over it. Maybe it's just the first few times that there's this agitation because they're not used to it. but eventually they get the routine, and then they're perfectly fine afterwards. Okay, it's really just personal preference. But I would recommend, small space in the beginning. Bathroom and kitchens are typically the first places that people try, and then they slowly just expand it to the whole house. And if he's doing fine, then you're good to go. There might be an escalation in barking, possibly, just because if he has more space, and if you guys are like an apartment or condo building, and there's people walking through the hallways and stuff, now he has access to get to the door, and technically in his world, he's the king of the castle at that moment. So it's his job to notify whoever's walking around, like, hey, there's a dog in here, you don't want to come in here. Okay, so as long as there's no complaints from the neighbors about that, and he barks when they walk by, and it's a done deal, then you're fine as well.
Okay.
Okay. How long have you had Finn for?
We adopted him in November, December, so
8 months or so.
Sure. So he's got like 4 more months to go.
Yeah.
Start with that.
And I've been doing it in small doses. Like I'll leave for 5 minutes and come back, and he knows we're going and sits up on the chair and looks around. Or I'll leave for even 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm just like, it's not worth creating him. And he seems fine, but then again, it's different than ours. So we'll wait until November and then see what happens.
Yep. And if you have the capacity to, you do a couple hours and 3 hours or whatever, and you might have like 2 years of Finn being great, and then one day he chews a pillow.
Right.
Okay? This has happened to me with my Pitty Lexi, and even my Chow Mix. Once they're past the crating period and I could trust them being loose, there's been at least a handful of times where one of them chewed a very expensive pair of shoes. One of them peed on a pillow. One of them dug up the vinyl of a flooring, and this is over the course of 8 years now, about a handful of times. So, it's not to say that he'll always be, luckily he's small, but, he's always going to be perfect. And the reason why I didn't go back to creating them was because it was such a large gap. They're 99.9% of the time not an issue. But at the same time, they're still dogs, and for whatever reason, they got frustrated or decided to be destructive because they were bored. Like, they're dogs. You could think about all you want, but they're not gonna figure it out. Okay. Sure.
They
Yeah. So,
like a pair of shoes.
Excuse me.
Maybe they're expressing their opinion about the pair of shoes you bought.
Yeah. Well, those Italian leather shoes, I would hope they'd like them, but guess not. Anything else?
Not about that, no.
So the other non-socialization question is, like once a year, probably we would all be in the same house together with his family and his sister's cat. And when we last had that over Christmas, we let her come in and sniff him while he was in his crate, and he seemed kind of okay with that. But then when he was out and about, I think we had him on a leash.
Mm-hmm.
He did have, I think he lunged, like he wanted to chase her.
Yeah.
So the remainder of the trip, we just like took turns, like he would go into his crate and she would roam the house, and then vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if e-collar, like if that should be a tool that we use in the future, or if we should just muzzle him, like what you think is kind of the best way to manage if he's in a house with a cat, not regularly, but rarely.
Sure. So there's a couple ways that you can go about this. One would be if you're wanting to create coexistence, you'd want to muzzle, have him leashed up, collared up as well. And just because he went to chase doesn't mean aggression. Right? And even though he's been not so social with dogs, doesn't mean that he can't be social with a cat. Right? Now, when he went to chase, was there any active like snapping or any kind of aggressive type behavior with it, or was it just chase?
Not that I remember.
No, it was kind of like it was like he would kind of lunge after a squirrel or something, and I don't even know if he would like attack it once he got there. But yeah, I don't remember barking or gnarling or anything.
Yeah, and I mean, like my pit caught a squirrel once, and like she caught it and like just like looked dumb because she's like, what do I do now? So, you know, it can go so many ways, but that's what the muzzle is for. Okay. So you can put the muzzle on and you could experiment with, hey, do you mind if we see what Finn is about? Right. And I'm sorry, is it your sister that has the cat?
My sister, yeah.
Your sister? Okay. So let's say, you know, you ask your sister and she says, yeah, sure, no problem. He's muzzled, right? What could happen? And let's say he goes to chase her and then it turns out he's cat friendly of all things. Okay. I would keep the muzzle on in the beginning just to make sure, you know, we play it safe. And then if you see maybe you're with each other for a week and after a few days, you're like, wow, like, yeah, like he just likes to play. Then if you're comfortable enough, you can go to no muzzle. Okay. Now, and I still have collar on just in case. Now, let's say he actually does go to, you know, into prey drive or whatever, and does try to actively become aggressive towards the cat. I might let it happen and see if the cat will whoop his ass.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've come across quite a few homes who did let the cat handle the business, and like there's nothing like that, you know.
Right.
And then that might create the peace where they have either just coexistence and Finn learns like, oh man, I don't mess with the cat because, you know, the cat will throw down. Or he's just like, all right, I know my place with you. I can't do that with you. Do you want to be friends? Like I've seen that happen too. Okay. Then the last thing would be maybe the cat doesn't defend itself. Then you would have to step in with the remote collar. And all I would care about is Finn not actively engaging with the cat in any manner, right? If we see an aggressive response. So like if the cat walks in the room and you see Finn and he leaves the room, that's how you'd want it to be, okay? Because that's just respect, okay? And then it's just time, and eventually Finn is just like, when I see you around, you know, I give up the space, you know, I don't mess with you, you don't mess with me. That's our relationship, okay? But and the leash is there just in case if you have to grab somebody or grab Finn or whatever. Instead of trying to be in the middle, like if they get intertwined, it becomes a thing. The last thing you want is to stick your hand and get either scratched up by the cat or, you know, be the recipient of a cat bite or something like that. You can easily grab the leash and at least pull Finn away to like stop the situation. Okay. So yeah, it can go any number of ways. Those are the most common. But definitely want to be prepared for worst case scenario and let your sister know. And they're completely fine with it. Like it's not gonna, if something goes down, it's not gonna psychologically scar the cat. Like the cat's not gonna get screwed up or anything like that. Okay. Questions?
No.
Socialization.
Yeah.
Okay. So I watched the video real quick. It actually looked pretty good. That's a nice little distance there. So then how do you think you would advance that? Or like, did you just do the walk and then go your different ways? Did you do the walk? Because I know you said you pet Penny at one point. Did you try doing the sniffing each other exercise again, or?
We didn't do that. So we would have, I mean, I know when we did that with you, she sniffed him, which we could like do again. Is there a version of it that I should have him sniff her or no?
Did we try to bring him to sniff her? I don't remember. No? Okay. So then you would replicate same thing with Penny if you want to do that. Positioning her so her shoulder's next to a leg to brace her, bending down to pick her up by the waist to keep the waist up so that the butt doesn't tuck down. And in this way, if you're holding like we did with Finn, the leash up here, you're preventing her from turning around, right? It's like, let's say you didn't do that and Finn goes to sniff and then she whips around and he's like, whoa, you might get a response there because he's not liking the face-to-face, but he might be fine with the sniffing. Okay. So, because like for humans, we greet, hi, how are you? And we shake hands. Dogs don't do that. In the dog world, face-to-face is threatening. It's very confrontational. So that's why I don't ever recommend on-leash greetings, because it's usually like that. They're more likely to end in tension. We'll always do nose to butt. Okay, so it's like a yin-yang. When dogs greet naturally, like at the dog park, it's almost always nose to butt. right? If I see nose to nose or like head to shoulder type stuff, that's usually confrontational. That, you know, if that were to happen here, we would disengage that because we don't want it to escalate. Okay, so you can do that and then see if he has any. If you start to see him sniffing, that's a good sign because that's curiosity. Okay, and we don't remote for curiosity. You want that to happen because that's what's going to lead to other things. Okay, let's say you try to do it the first few times, it's a no-go. Don't give up. You just keep trying it, right? So if you do 20 walks and on the 21st walk, he finally goes to sniff Penny, then it's great. We made a step forward. It just took us 20 times. Okay. You can try closing off this gap a little bit. Let me think here. At least half a foot. You know, so if you're at 2.5 feet, bringing it to 2 feet. Another thing you could do is Finn on one side and then Penny on your other side. Okay, that's so like when we get dogs here, when we start to, how'd you say, get them to interact and like just get comfortable with each other. Like we don't do, like at our facility, it's really slow. It's, the dog is in our facility, but other than interaction with the handlers, there's no interaction with dogs. They see the dogs and all that stuff, but that's it. And then on day 2, we do the dog's position in the middle, and then a handler will be walking around with the other dog, and then they'll switch places, and then we do the nose to butt thing like we did with Penny. Okay, and then on day 3, we repeat day 2 to warm them up, and then walk them into. We'll either walk them into an open area where they'll be loose with each other to intermingle, or if we have a dog that's slower, we'll do the dog that we're using and then the dog that needs to be socialized on one side. We'll walk for a bit. We even go for like half an hour, 45-minute walks, and then we try side-by-side walking. Okay, and then see how that works out. If you do it very step-by-step. In my experience, you're more likely to succeed. Like we have a dog here right now who's a blue heeler. And the last time she was here, it was like, forget about it. Like it wasn't gonna happen. But now she's walking with like 5, 6 other dogs. She's still muzzled, but she's in the middle of a pack of dogs. Whereas we started her with 1-1, just like I told you. Then when we saw her progress, we added a second dog, then we added a dog to her side, and gradually. And then yesterday, we were going to take her, and I had her with 5 other dogs, and she was going underneath them and smelling their stomachs and, you know, their butts and stuff like that. So little by little, she's slowly opening up to the fact of socializing. But we've had her here for boarding for like 2 weeks now, you know, and she's been here at least 5 times for a total sum of maybe like a month and a half, you know. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that's with her being in this situation or context 24/7 during that time. Whereas with Penny, it's a, you know, 1 hour thing twice a week or however length of time you do.
And then with the side-by-side walking, is the goal ultimately that they are almost or are physically touching, or
right?
Like how close is that?
Yeah, so like, because if you were to get Finn to be next to Penny, they would be bumping at some point. Right? It's shoulder to shoulder. And you know, if you take the time and, you know, to do all the steps, less likely to get something once you get to that point. Uh-huh. Right? So I might start off, what you can do is, let's say you're walking with both of them here, you know, Finn here, Penny here, and then it's doing well. Maybe 30 minutes into the walk, I'll take Penny and swing her over, and you can stretch out with Finn and just bring her closer. So it's kind of awkward for you. And you're just still walking. And like here in my facility, when we do that, we go in, because it's like 6,000 square foot of open space. We just keep going in an oval. And then we slowly just bring them two together, looking for any moments, you know, because now that they're closing in, he might turn and then try. And I'll correct them and pull them aside and then keep walking. the thing is to keep him in the context so he goes, okay, that didn't work. I'm still here next to her walking. What else can I do? And it's accept the exercise and just walk with Penny.
Uh-huh.
And in the moment that we do see a lunge or they kind of go into it really quickly, our response is what?
Up, away, and tap until and keep moving until he stops it. Okay? Because dogs can only do one thing at a time. He's either going to focus on Penny and try to go after her or walk, right? But if you stop, it allows them to really focus on the go after Penny aspect of it, as opposed to, because if he's trying to go sideways as you're walking forward, it's super awkward, right? So that helps you redirect his brain, correct, and then redirect his brain to, that's not allowed, this is what we're doing, and you're still next to Penny. Like, she's not going anywhere, okay?
And if that happens, do we create a little bit more space for a little while and then come back together, or just?
Correct.
Okay.
You would create a little bit of space, but still keep it like this, and then gradually bring in the hand that has him on, because you would want Finn on the outside, okay? And then Penny on the inside. So if anything, if I need to remove her, if I need more space, I can easily do this, okay? And then you may even have the leash higher up, closer to the collar for Finn. So if something happens, again, as soon as you pull up and away, you're getting immediate physical contact with him to prevent him actually grabbing on or whatever.
Okay. And then let's say magically down the road, we're having them peacefully walking next to each other, and he seems comfortable with that. What does the next stage of socializing look like?
Then I would go into a neutral territory. So like, let's say you had a place with a yard, for example, okay? Now that's technically your territory, but like, let's say you walk with the both of them at the end of a walk together, right? And then I let the leashes go. If Penny's owners are comfortable with that, right? And see what happens. He could be fine with the walking context, but then in the context of like, now we're meandering and then maybe Penny goes to sniff him or something, that might be a little different, okay? You can also keep it on leash where you're both kind of just directing and guiding him and getting him used to Penny walking like this and like walking to the side and stuff and coming up and sniffing him, and you're just watching for any tension until eventually it's a nice, just relaxed, okay, we're just coexisting and meandering in the backyard. Now, let's say everything goes smoothly and maybe he's opening up to Penny, or he's fine with just coexisting and he lays down and Penny lays down next to him and he's not bothered by it, right? But then maybe Finn's at your feet and Penny's walking around and then comes to you to say hi, that might be a problem. Mm-hmm. Okay, because that's a totally different context. Most people think that once they see the interaction going smooth, they assume that life's just going to be hunky-dory. And they go, nope, there's a lot of little contexts. And I always assume that the dog will have a problem with it. So like, let's say Penny's going to drink some water. Even though Finn's 8 feet away, he might have a problem with Penny drinking his water. So then when I see that about to happen, I immediately focus on Finn. I'm ready with my remote. He looks at her, maybe his tail wags going, how do I feel about that? But he doesn't do anything. And she walks away and his tail settles, fine. But then I would keep an eye on that each time. Because just because it went fine the first time doesn't mean it'll go fine, the second time. More often than not, when we have reactive dogs, when they're in their owner's personal space resting and another dog approaches, they become defensive. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then, so you would just, if we're all in a yard space together and he does become upset about something, are you grabbing the leash and pulling up, or it's just remote at that point?
If I know that the dog that we're using won't respond and the owner is comfortable with it, I'll just go to remote. Okay. Because the main concern is, one, we don't want anybody to get hurt, but two, You know, dogs have boundaries clearly, right? So like Penny could be completely the passive dog ever, but then in one particular context, she's like, screw you, man, like this ain't going down. And then, you know, trying to address that as well. So I always go by the other person. If we're using somebody else's dog, if they're fine with everything and you laid it out for them, then you still have leash on. Leashes are always on in this stage, because in case things go south, we have something to grab that we don't have to get our hands involved. Okay, that makes it a bit more organic. If he's laying at your feet and you see Penny approaching, you can't make him like that situation. You can teach him to avoid it, which would look like, you know, Finn is here, Penny is approaching, I see that he's getting tense, and I might remote him to leave me, right? So that when Penny comes in, if he's left the space, there's nothing to guard. Okay, because you're the thing he's guarding. So you're working around it, and what you're teaching Finn is, when you see Penny or a dog approaching us, instead of, you know, standing your ground and being confrontational, you're actually going to just leave the situation and avoid it entirely. Okay. You can try to keep him present and remote him to get him to tolerate it, but it'll most likely always be something that you'll have to watch. You know, it's like a boyfriend and girlfriend, and then the ex-boyfriend comes over, whatever. It's just awkward. You know, but we're civilized. We don't get physical over that, you know. But nothing's going to make the boyfriend comfortable with accepting the ex-boyfriend talking to her unless he decides to, right? So it's the same thing for dogs. Unless Finn goes, you know what, I'm not going to have a problem with Penny. Like, you can't make him accept that concept. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, I think it's just, I'm certainly like constantly coming to terms with the fact that this is going to be like an insanely lengthy process for him to be socialized, not just with Penny, but then with like the other dogs that, you know, my sister's dog that's kind of a wild puppy right now, that's going to be a whole side project. Like, do you think that there's anything else we should be doing or could be doing to try to work on his socialization skills?
Other than increasing the frequency, not really.
Okay.
Because it's not just Finn, it's you guys.
Yeah.
You know, Finn threw you into the world of advanced dog behavior. You know, it's, once you learn it, it kind of becomes second nature, in my opinion. And you just learn to just preemptively or just subconsciously do things, you know, like whenever I'm at a dog park, if I'm with a client at the dog park and I see like their dog drinking water, I'm already watching the dogs around the bowl, just in case if I see something, because maybe that particular dog is a resource guard, because that does happen. And I make my client aware of that, because people are so stuck in the world of dogs are friendly and share things and things is always pretty, and that's not the case, right? So then once you learn Finn and his, you know, and his quirks and stuff, then it's like, and you get to the point where you can socialize them, you're still in the back of your head thinking like Finn is a special needs dog, and I have to always just kind of be mindful. And it's not that I don't want you to be paranoid, you're just aware. Mm-hmm. Awareness is healthy, you know, but you're aware in the sense of dog. So like for me, when we walk, or actually even at the training sessions we did, you know, we are always aware of off-leash dogs and looking, and then right away, this way we're a step ahead in addressing the situation so that it escalates anything bigger than that. It's the same thing for you guys, you know, but your awareness is going to be much different because you're exposing him to context that he's not completely comfortable with, like socialization.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think trying to figure out how to socialize him with my sister's dog feels way more complicated because she is this sparky, energetic puppy. So, and they haven't even gotten to a place where she's walking well on a leash apparently. So I feel like leash walking is out. So it's mostly just us going over to their backyard from time to time and keeping them, about 6 feet apart. And she just sort of barks at him when she sees him, wants to play with him, and doesn't understand she can't. So I don't know if there's other things that we could be doing with that, or if it'll just be a matter of time when she's a little bit more behaved. I don't know.
Right. The only other thing I could think of is like my place, in the sense that we would be able to press them more because we're a dog facility, and start incorporating them and getting them used to like walking next to other dogs, like with the dog, the pack walk and all that stuff. But it's really both of us, right? Because I've had clients ask that. They're like, can I send my dog to you and then you socialize them and then it just transfers to me? Like, it doesn't work that way. Okay.
You do all work for us.
Yeah. It's what we can do is we can help push them faster because we have the capacity to, but our structure and the way we do things is going to be the same as yours. Right. So when you go about doing your own stuff, Finn's like, oh, I've already done this 20 times at Jesse's place. Oh, I've already walked next to a dog. Now, there is the variable of he is with you guys, right? And you give him something to protect, okay? So that is a variable. But the foundation of I've already done this before and I've done it very much like this can help speed things along. But every dog is different, but that's another potential. But you guys are a bit, I think, northeast of us. Because we're in Logan Square. We're on Western and Diversey for our facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, we'll keep working on it. I think we've been pretty lax about trying to, I think now we're sort of coming up with let's look at our schedules every week and try to put on the calendar X amount of walks with Penny. So, we can always revisit that with you if it seems like we want somehow to figure out additional interactions at your facility, but I think we need to put in more hours before we do that.
Yeah, and then you got to think also in the wintertime. People who not a lot of people like being outside during the wintertime for extended periods of time. So it's not uncommon that people will regress during the winter season.
Right.
And it's almost always the same answer where in the springtime, I'll get emails like, Jesse, my dog, I got lazy. My dog's not listening as well. And I'll tell them just a number. Once you raise the number and the dog goes, oh crap, I remember this now, then everything usually comes back. When it comes to behavioral stuff, you'll take some steps back. It's not the end of the world. You can just pick back up again. What's nice about e-collar is that dogs pick up back to the point that they were fairly quickly. Okay, so it's not like a complete regression. You have to start from zero. It all comes down to the number. And then the familiarity of the context or the concept of the exercise that you're doing. So walking next to Penny, he's gonna be like, oh, I remember this, right? So you getting back to that closure of 2 feet or whatever should happen fairly quickly. Okay.
Yeah, even walking them next to each other back 2 days in a row, he was we had worked up to them with nobody being in between us, and then today it was just immediate, and that space shrunk. So it's if it's nice to see the progress on a day-to-day basis, it's just a matter of us putting in the time to do the repetitions and
and there's no rush. I had a client, it took their dog a year.
I think she struggles more than me with when is this ever going to be different? And feeling like there is a rush. Why isn't this better now? And not that there is a rush, but wanting a little bit more results faster. But
yeah, one thing would be if you rush yourself and something goes south, there's the owner concept of, or the owner variable of losing confidence. We have failures all the time at my facility, but we know how to move past it, correct it, move past it, and then build on that, right? I mean, I think I'm sure you'll find millions of quotes about failure and success. So don't ever take that, you know, but to like, if you see a failure, like don't ever take it to heart. Like you correct it, you keep moving forward. You don't want to rush things because you are learning as you progress with Finn.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm glad that Finn's actually taking a little bit longer, because imagine that it actually progressed faster and you'd be like head first into like socialization, and then one day you hit a context that he wasn't ready for,
Right.
and it goes south and you're like, oh crap, how do we handle this?
Yeah.
Right? But when you do it slower, you're developing all these skill sets and these recognitions of nuances in dog behavior and stuff as you go along. You know, so like me, I didn't just jump. I've been in business for 10 years and I just got a facility a year ago. And I'm glad it happened a year ago and it didn't happen 10 years ago, because I would have not been prepared for the stress of having a facility 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, that's all normal. Again, like I had a client, it took them a year before their dog opened up and became sociable. And that was only to one dog. First friend he made was a year later. Okay.
Yeah.
And they used to go to a dog park every day because they lived across the street from a dog park. And it took them a year still. But then after that first dog, a month later it was another dog. Then another month later it was another dog. Then a couple of weeks later it was another dog. Then it really started to, like, you know, grow. So yeah, you know, I understand that you want Finn to be normal.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a process.
I want to be able to bring him over to my sister's house one day and have. It would be nice for like friends to be able to watch our dog if we left town.
Sure. Yeah.
Friends with dogs.
Right.
The only other thing I wanted to ask about was that so today when we were on the walk with Penny, there was a moment where the path we were on got skinny, so she went in front of us and was behind, and it was a pretty tight. I mean, maybe it was a foot or less, and his like ears really perked up when she was in front of him. I wasn't sure if it almost looked to me like I was hyper vigilant about it because I thought it was like him potentially going to react to her. I wasn't sure, unless it was just curiosity. I don't know if what I saw was a problem or normal.
One thing that like the first thing that came to mind was that dogs tend to walk or want to walk with who's at front. Okay. So like, let's say you're walking with Finn and then Gus is in front of you. Like a lot of couples, bless you, will struggle with the dog wanting to forge and be ahead with, you know, the other person.
Yeah.
So the first thing I think about is that kind of concept, but with Penny, you know, so it wasn't so much him going like, oh, I want to walk with Penny, but more so like, hey, I want to be at the front because you guys are at the front. If he started to get grumbly or something, then I'd say that's probably more along the lines of just his brain, like that, because dogs are reactive, they're not proactive. So they respond to a stimulus. So Penny going in front is a stimulus. It's a change in what's going on. And then the brain perks up. So I wouldn't worry so much about it being a reactive response if you didn't hear, or like maybe, or you didn't see like hackles, if you didn't hear grumbling, and it was just like the ears going up. I think that's more him just going like, something changed. Now you can absolutely remote it because you're just saying doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I was hyper aware of it because when we're out on walks in our neighborhood, he does have a hard time when we're walking behind another dog.
Yeah.
Which is obviously why pack walk is helpful. But I feel like when we talked to you about it, you were like, yeah, usually like it bothers them. Well, I don't know if it bothers him either way, if a dog's behind us walking or if a dog's in front of us walking.
Yeah.
He just doesn't want them anywhere near him.
Yeah. Well, behind is not uncommon because he's vulnerable in terms of defense. In front, I would say it's more so just the fact that he sees a dog, right? Because the pack walk context and the Penny walking in front context are very different.
Okay.
Because with Penny being side by side, and it looked like you got him to settle here, his ears look somewhat kind of back, is that he got comfortable with that picture. But then the picture changed to this, and he goes, wait, what's going on here? Right? So then it would be, you could even do this with Penny. getting him comfortable with that picture as well, so that he doesn't feel like, oh, do I have to be alert with this dog in front?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
And he relies pretty heavily on avoidance to like control those feelings when we're out. And we'll like, okay, there's a situation where we're gonna sit and let them go by because it's not a great setup. And he'll know to like not look, because either he knows that if he does, then it's gonna lead to a remote, or he just would rather not. So a dog out in front doesn't let him be avoidant in that way. And so I think that's another reason it's hard for him.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to the like not looking or avoiding when you step aside is good. Keep an eye on that. If you start to see him not do that anymore and kind of observe and let it happen without becoming stimulated, that's progress.
Right.
Okay, because we have 4 responses: fight, flight, avoid, and submission. So reactivity would be a fight response. So we've eliminated that. So then we have avoidance, right? He can't run away from it. So it's either avoidance or submission. And submission is just another word for acceptance. Okay. So right now he's in the, I don't want to get tapped, so I'm going to pretend it's not there or completely just ignore it. But eventually he might pick up on, oh, like I haven't been tapped in a while. What happens if I look at the dog, but not in a aggressive fashion, and then nothing happens? He's like, oh, okay, cool. It's not that I couldn't look at dogs. It's just I can't bark at dogs, you know. But his state is still relaxed, and he's allowing it to happen without changing his demeanor. Then that's another step in the right direction.
And when so like if we're sitting on a bench or whatever, and we're looking at we're watching dogs pass, would you be tapping for like just huffy breath? Because I feel like when he looks at them, he's gonna go. But other than, I feel like his hackles really aren't up. It's like a very small response.
Yeah.
Maybe he's doing those like labor breaths to like help relax him.
He reminds me of like a howler monkey. Kind of like, I don't know. He's working up to a.
So when it comes to those like real subtle kind of reactive responses, I go by, is it getting more frequent? Is it staying static? Or is it getting less frequent? Okay. So if you feel and you're like, man, I kind of feel like this is getting less frequent, you could let it slide. Okay. And then like he's kind of processing it on his own. It's just going to be a little bit slower. Okay. If it's getting worse, either by more frequent or more escalated, or it's staying static, then I would remote it for sure.
Okay.
Because then he's either going to stay stuck or he's going to go back to what it was before.
Okay.
He seems pretty static with it.
Yeah.
It's not getting worse, but it's pretty predictable.
Sure.
Like we know. And they can be so far away. He'll like just get preoccupied. And I feel like it's a good thing to bring him out of that too. Just to remote with a number.
Yeah. Yeah. The stricter you are, the better. In terms of what you disagree with. And if you're ever wondering, like, should I correct this? You probably should.
Right.
Okay. Right. Just you know, because that's a real common thing that I get. They're like, the owner will talk about, like, I wasn't too sure, but do I correct or not? I'm like, if you're second guessing it, chances are yes, you should correct it. Okay, so you could just take that as a general rule of thumb.
And I guess my thought is like, if we're tapping that, then he'll go back to not looking at all.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess my hope was like, if he's looking and repeatedly realizing like nothing happens when these dogs go by, obviously if it's remained static like this for months, like it's not going to change.
Yeah, no, that's correct. That's correct. Okay.
Okay.
When everything's appropriate and correct and is working like it should be a fairly noticeable, like, not just change in behavior, but, you know, just in terms of progress and stuff, like you should feel like, hey, this is good. We're moving forward. As you know, day by day, like you'll notice little things. And I tell people the tiniest bit of progress is still progress. Okay. People want to go 0 to 100 with their dogs. And I go, it's not how it works. You know, it's step by steps. In some cases, it is like 0 to 100. You know, but a lot of times it's either in the middle or kind of like what you guys are doing, which is, you know, step by step, little by little, day by day type of stuff.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Pack walks are great too.
Thank you. Well, we'll keep having them. So you're always more than welcome to join. You're always welcome to send me videos, you know, just ask for my insight and stuff. I'm more than happy to review them and send you like, oh, this is what I would do or whatever. You know, don't feel like you're in a rush. I think, in my opinion, where you guys were at when you first started and where you're at now is and considering where you're coming from too, like just given this dog that has issues and not being too dog savvy, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice to remember like all the things that we just could not do with him that we are able to do now. So we've come a long way. We've got a ways to go, but we've come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll see how the pack walks, because I was thinking the other day if people were comfortable with it, because we used to do side by side to help, you know, people had dogs like, you know, Finn, and then there's you guys may have seen, I don't know if you saw Frankie, who's the blue heeler with the muzzle as well. You know, to help them, help everyone push their dogs as well. But obviously COVID's really changed a lot of things, but everybody's been responsible and understanding with bringing their masks and everything like that. So we'll see how this week or the coming ones turn out. And if it seems to be a good amount of dogs and stuff, I'll present the idea of like, hey, do you guys mind doing side-by-side stuff to help, you know, Finn and any other dogs there dealing with reactivity.
Awesome. That sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Anything else?
Mm-mm.
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Good job, guys. It was a pleasure working with you. This isn't goodbye. This is see you later. Okay.
Cool.
So any questions, you shoot me an email, and then hopefully we'll see you on Saturdays time to time.
Okay. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it, man. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Right. See you later.
See you later.